Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the Prehospital Paradigm Podcast. I'm Scott Wildenheim, and with me is part of the usual crew. We've got Caleb Ferroni here to my left, and right over there is Dr. John Hill. And we have a very special guest today, Dr. Ross Campensa from the Aultman system. And I guess we need to kind of preface a little bit with, how we have Aultman, how we have some Aultman influence here at UH, and we're kind of in the process of some joint ventures and whatnot, and you guys have joined some of the EMS program and some of the processes and whatnot, protocol stuff that we're doing here. So of course, welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. And it's been about a year, a little over a year, and both of us kind of approached each other, and we wanted to solidify what we were doing down in the Canton area where Aultman is at, as far as EMS is concerned, and obviously with University Hospital having the EMS Institute, we were very interested
in some partnership.
And I believe University Hospital was interested in, their expansion down towards the Canton area, so it kind of just worked out nicely that we were looking for someone to basically do it. Well, it was MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, but a partnership as far as, working with UH, having their inroads down towards us, but we needed a little more guidance what we wanted to do with our system. And basically, it was at a point where Aultman Hospital, the main reason why is Aultman Hospital has other sister hospitals and freestanding ER, et cetera, and wanted to become more of a health delivery system.
Correct.
So we also wanted to look at EMS instead of just being each of their fiefdoms from each of the hospitals, that if you were Aultman related under the health delivery system. And then we said, well, geez, to do that, we needed to expand that into actually what I came up with, the term was the HDS-EMS, so Health Delivery System EMS,
of course, yeah,
for Aultman, and that never existed before. So then we were looking at that, how do we design this, what do we do with this, and obviously with the University Hospital already as large as you guys are. So you guys did it on a grand scale.
We're still doing it on a grand scale.
So it just worked out nice as far as joining, and then now I'm basically with you guys with University Hospital's EMSI or EMS Institute, and I oversee the health delivery system for Aultman, which is down in the Canton area, and then sit on the panel with many of you and kind of report back to our area and have joint ventures and have really
makes all kind of sense this day and age to have shared resources like that, right?
And actually it's worked out very, very nicely, to be honest with you. Yeah. As far as sharing ideas, it's nice to sit down with other medical directors around the table and other medics and people, allied health personnel that are very EMS intense and focused, and
that's a word. That's the word. Is intense.
Intense, focused. Want to stay on the cutting edge, and be able to share ideas. And it was just a kind of a breath of fresh air to kind of do that. So, and it's worked out very nicely.
I know. I mean, even my personal experience, it's nice to walk into the rooms with all those other people that want to be there, right? It's not like, well, we got to do this thing as a mandate for me, or, nobody else would do it, and you got voluntold to be an EMS medical director.
So it's just nice to have other...
Everybody legitimately wants to be there.
Right, and medics, allied health, the medical directors, it's just nice to see people want to, like you said, want to do it.
Yeah, feed off each other.
Yeah, and want to see it grow, want to see it
even if we disagree.
Which is great. That's how we get things done.
Yeah,
like I said, there's many things I've opened my eyes to, and like we were earlier talking, I've been in it 33 years, but still there's obviously always something to learn, and what's on the, what's in front of us, and try to improve the system. So,
well, we want to talk about some of those improvements here in just a minute, and specifically your experience with some of those improvements in resuscitation. But a little bit more about the Aultman system. How many med controls and what kind of footprint are you looking?
Right now we have Aultman, the main facility, which is in Canton, downtown Canton, and then we have the 2 other sister hospitals, one in Alliance, and then one in Orville, which is Orville is where Smuckers is at.
Indeed,
That's where
yes.
everyone always knows Smuckers. So
My mother-in-law lives
so
there.
It's got to be good. Oh, there you go.
I'm in Orville frequently.
All right, well, that's where I'm at.
There.
So for us as a director. And then we also have Aultman Massillon, which is a freestanding ER now. So basically that's our health delivery system. So all those different areas. And then squads in each of those areas. Like I said before, it was kind of piecemeal, and now we're trying to oversee it like UH did with more of the health delivery system. You know, try to standardize protocol, policy, procedures. Each of us learn off each within our system, and then, as you said, now that we're with the MSI up with you guys at UH, then, you know, adopting that protocol and kind of contributing to it, and plus you guys having the main outline from it and policies, procedures, definitely a lot of other things like the, you know, Fire Rescue 1 Academy, CMEs, basically a lot better education, accountability, and just resources for doing these different things. So.
Then, so I mean, of those departments, there's another 20, 25, 30 medical controls. I understand it's always in flux, but
yeah, right now I bet you we're honestly down at actually more like 10 or 12.
10, 12, okay.
Previously we had more, and then a competitor kind of moved into the area, and that was one of the nicest too, was because then when that happened, we lost some departments.
Sure.
And now, honestly, we're starting to have people.
A little extra staying power.
Well, actually, right now, if you build it, they will come. And I'll tell you the truth. Right now, we have some others that are kind of knocking on the door, saying, "Hey, you know, we've seen what you've done and what you've done with UH, and kind of basically interested again." So.
Yeah, fantastic.
It's awesome.
Yes. Now, enough about the hospital.
Yeah.
A little bit about you, right?
Well,
so tell us about Ross. First of all, how in the world did you wind up in EMS? And more importantly, why did you stay?
Yeah, there you go. Went on a dare. No.
Lost about 33 years ago?
Yeah, and it was like, what? What did I do? But actually, long story short, or story.
Yeah, story.
My father was a Cleveland firefighter.
Okay.
And my sister was an RN. And so I always grew up around medical books and fire service.
Firehouse, sure.
And kind of combined the two together and said, geez, I kind of like this medical stuff, but I like fire and that type of aspect of emergency. So then from there, I basically kind of grew, and then the 6-year medical program was out in Ohio in Rootstown, and I wanted to apply there to go into medical school, and actually at that point, always wanted to still focus on emergency care, and found out that emergency medicine was a specialty, although it hadn't been a specialty
Not long at that point, right?
In 1980.
Correct.
And so then I really kind of latched onto that. As we talked earlier, off the air, I became an advanced EMTA in 1980, and then went into the 6-year medical program. I got out in 1986, went to Akron General's emergency medicine residency, and right off the bat, part of the residency was always you did some EMS work, but I really focused a lot on EMS and helping train departments, and really focused on wanting to be a medical director of EMS systems. And then in 1989, when I graduated from residency, I got out, stayed in the area, and actually, for the first time, became an official medical director of different EMS departments.
Yeah.
And kind of grew from there. So that's when I started basically being a medical director. Then kind of continued to grow the different departments I worked with. And then finally in 1991, latched on to City of Green Fire Department. And with them, that grew. And then actually they kind of wanted to have a full-time medical director where I would focus on them. So then I actually, in 91, I became their assistant medical director and then finally their full medical director. And basically with them, I've been with them now since 91. So whatever
Wow.
that is, 30...
2
2
years.
years,
Those years, yep.
32 years. After 30, you lose count. But
Wow.
So yeah, I've been with the Green Fire Department, and my position, because like I said, what do you mean by a full-time medical director? Is I actually do 3 8-hour shifts in uniform on the squad at the station every month.
Oh, fantastic.
So we do A shift, B shift, and C shift. I actually work 8 hours with each shift every month. So that's why I've kind of have a unique relationship with them.
Yeah, no, of course.
And like I said, then the other thing they like is because I'm in uniform running calls, then I always tell them I walk in your boots. As in, some things look good in books and sound good at the table,
right,
and just don't work in the field.
Yeah, correct.
So they know that I know because I'm in the field with them. Sure. I've innovated.
Practical
I've run full arrests on golf courses, 3rd story of the house.
Yep. Between a bed and a wall.
Do all that. Sure. So, or strange.
Anytime you want to come run shift with us, Doc, 8 hours a month.
You go ahead and call your medical director,
There you go.
and he'll be happy to do that.
But, so I've had some strange but true stories going on all the different calls and stuff. But it's nice because then, like I said, I know what looks good in the books, what looks good at the table, but does it really make sense in the back of a moving rig? Is it really going to work or not? So there were a lot of issues there. I was always one that said, you know what, I know there were studies that said, does mechanical CPR help, not help, etc. But just as an example, a while back, I said, if you could sit there and do perfect CPR in a non-moving squad and whatever, okay, then try to compete. But I've been in the back of a moving squad enough to know that it's, you need something to help you. Correct. If you're really going to do true compressions consistently.
Consistent is the important part there, right?
Trust me, I'm in the back banging around, each of us trying to hold on to someone's belt while your head's hitting the, the supports of the back of the rig.
Yeah, one arm on the rail, one arm on the chest, somebody holding in the middle.
Yeah, but just experience like that or things has helped. And plus it gave me a unique opportunity where there's things, like today we're going to talk about heads-up CPR, but then even rapid sequence intubation, or the nice thing with me with Green Fire Department is, and I know not only everyone's first name, I know everyone's first name, last name, mannerisms, strengths, weaknesses. Right. So we all know each other that closely that I feel comfortable kind of doing some of these things.
Allowing some of these other advanced procedures, yeah.
And the other nice thing was that department actually has sent me out to the National Paramedic Program symposiums every year for the past 30 years. It used to always be going out to the GEMS conference, but now it's actually kind of been EMS World has kind of taken over. Yep. But so either GEMS or EMS World I've gone to for well over 30 years.
Oh, that's great that they want to keep you on the cutting edge of all that stuff, and it's not incumbent upon you to go.
No, so they send me out there every year, come back, ideas, thoughts, and like I said, we don't always jump on the next shiny object, but at least I can hear what's out there. It's interesting.
What's the old adage? And everyone will be the first or the last to adopt anything new.
Yep. Well, like I said, I would tell people I got my MD, not my GOD, so I'm all ears, right? So
I like that.
I'm like, I want to hear what they have to say.
I like that a lot. So.
For mechanical CPR devices, right? Like Lucas is what we use.
Right.
Obviously, it's safer for the back of the ambulance, but for me, when I'm running with squads, or just imagine doing CPR while going down a narrow staircase, you literally physically can't do that CPR. And it's we all know it's early CPR, it's early defib, and it's less than 10 seconds off the chest. Right. It takes more than 10 seconds just to turn a corner.
Right.
If I can have a device on you doing that CPR for me while I'm trying to negotiate a patient through the hallway, it's going to be better for the patient.
Or, like I said, you're on in the ER, they're just already on your cot, and everyone can do that. But
Yeah,
like
we're very lucky in our care of
Right.
patients, right? We get well lit rooms. We've got all
Right.
the people we need. I got someone that can run down to essentially an infinite stock room to get me all the drugs that I want,
Right.
as opposed to very different than care in the field. That you've got your drug box, you've got your monitor, you've got two personnel.
Very finite toolbox.
Correct.
Yeah.
We use Lucas also. We all call it Fire Medic Lucas.
Right. Right.
And the ongoing thing is it always wins Firefighter of the Year, too.
Yes,
the hardest
yes.
worker.
It's old, there is this old band. I don't want to get into that conflict, but like you mentioned,
Firefighter Lucas doesn't complain either. That's why they win.
Yeah, right.
no, and you, like you said, you're going down a second level. How you doing? You know, and you know, we all know once you build up that coronary artery perfusion pressure, perfusion to the brain, which we'll talk about. You know, even in the few seconds, you start to lose that, and you know, going down the steps. Forget it. You know,
Correct. Yeah, forget it.
Moving from the house to the squad. I always used to say, everyone's just doing crowd-pleasing CPR. It looks like CPR, kinda, and
show
it's
code.
really basically doing, it's doing nothing.
Right.
So in reality, and that's where the mechanical part kind of came in, where I really think it made a difference.
on that.
Well, coming down the steps, house to the squad, back of a moving squad. You know, it's just there was no way to really do consistent.
Oh, hey, hand me
CPR.
that. Stop doing compressions. Hand me that thing over there that I need, and I got to restart.
me that
again.
BVM.
Right. Yeah. And obviously, you can defibrillate right through.
Right
So
through
you don't
it.
even have to stop for that. So,
Huge,
which
right.
integrates into some of the
Some of the stuff we're about to talk
other
about,
heads-up
right?
CPR
Yeah.
stuff. Yep.
Which took away all the fun of hands-on defib, which we don't get to talk about anymore.
Yeah, we rolled right through that. So, of course, we've kind of started to lay the groundwork of the real reason you're here, which is we want to talk about your experience with heads-up CPR,
Heads-up
and how you
CPR.
got there and whatnot. And there's some other kind of offshoots of resuscitation innovation kind of stuff that we'll talk about as we navigate through this. Obviously, the groundwork has already been laid with the mechanical CPR discussion here, and then we'll talk about some other devices that you've rolled out to
Right.
implement this system. Let's start with.
Kind of the background.
What first of all, heads up CPR, well, what's that entire journey what's that entire journey look
Right.
like from you know, you're working at Green. I want to
Right.
I
How
want
do I want to do this?
I want to right
Give it
right.
a try.
Yeah. You know, I want to improve outcomes. You know,
Okay.
how'd you even get turned on to
Yeah.
begin with, and then you know where'd the trail take us from there?
Well, we'd mentioned, actually twofold. It is a journey. There was a journey and continued journey, and then there's the process. So, what ended up happening really was probably back in 2019.
Okay.
And again, I was at one of those national conferences, and Dr. Pepe was there. And you know, he's one of the gurus of EMS
Correct.
and things, and
Eagles.
he was he was starting to talk about that they're starting to look at this new way of doing CPR, and he could talk about it some, but not a lot because the studies weren't out yet or just coming out. But he kind of wetted our whistle that there was this thing.
There's a paradigm
and
shift coming.
And it
Yeah.
sounded like it was. Basically, what he was alluding to was this starting to do heads-up CPR, which kind of at that point everyone was like, "What heads-up CPR? Wouldn't you put him in Trendelenburg
That doesn't
to
even
perfuse the
stand,
brain?"
right, yeah.
And so it kind of was like really thinking outside
It's counterintuitive,
the box.
right? Yeah.
At the same time, I'll be honest with you, I also was looking into what Rialto Fire was doing with Chief Joe Powell
Yep.
out in California. And basically, I was happy to hear, to me, he was one of the people that finally said, you know what? You know, the emperor's naked. Here's our resuscitation rate in 2019.
Correct.
Versus how it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, et cetera. And I think he was one of the people that, to me at least, finally said, you know what, is this really, are we
okay
we're
with
really
this?
not doing,
Yeah,
a
right.
lot better. You know, if you
Right.
went into someone and said, hey, I have this great medical treatment for you, it works 6 to 8% of the time, you'd be like, oh, anything else?
I pass, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think, to
You're
me,
saying
when
CPR
I
is-
started following what Rialto was doing and really starting to think outside the box. So I had, Dr. Pepe was already thinking outside the box. What is this other type of way of doing CPR? Then Chief Powell was starting to look into the Rialto way and, and how they were doing a different kind of bundle on resuscitation and different thoughts. And then I kept thinking the same thing. It's like, we got to be able to do something different, something better. And not only restart the heart, but is there a way to get our, not just ROSC better, but also our neurologic
Save
outcome
brain,
better?
Right.
So I'll be honest with you, that's where I started the journey. And that's why I tell people, don't think if you're going to do heads-up CPR, you're just like, oh, heads-up CPR, okay,
we'll do that tomorrow.
We'll just go into it. Because for me, and this is 2023, I started the journey in 2019. Yeah. And it really did take a couple years, I'll be honest with you, till we even put our toe in the water and thought, hey, how do we want to, how is this going to work? So that's what I meant by it really was a journey. And then I was exposed to, and there's pros and cons. You read the literature. You always take everything with a grain of salt, a skeptical eye. But I did see and saw some encouraging things with heads-up CPR, and also Rialto doing a different bundle of resuscitation and looking at the studies and that, and it just seems like, well, they definitely weren't doing any worse than anybody, and
Correct.
It sounds like things were doing better.
Better, right.
And then with heads-up CPR, like we just alluded to, it's not just, oh, well, we're doing CPR, so now we'll just raise the head up. I mean, that's totally not heads-up CPR. So there's a lot more to the process. And I was still skeptical. I said, well, okay, you're going to raise the head up, but how far are you going to raise the head up? And is there going to be a point where if you raise it up too much,
diminishing returns.
Diminishing returns is actually going to be a negative result.
Yep.
And who knows what would you just raise it up and leave it in the patient there, or do you have to do it gradually, or what percent and what angles? And so I still just, like I said, from 2019 through the next couple years, I kind of just kept a, no pun intended, but a pulse on what was going on with it. And then I followed it further. It became more refined as far as, more scientifically. I could get on board with understanding what the process was and what angles they would start at, and the studies showing at what level then that they lose, that there was a negative return, and then you wouldn't go above a certain level. And then we finally kind of took the plunge at Greenfire, where I said, well, there's parts to this we could do. Eligard is the one, device by Dr. Keith Lurie, but you don't not necessarily need that device, but that actually made a lot of this other process easier. Mm-hmm. But as I've told other people, we actually ended up, just to tell you the truth, when we started it at Greenfire, we just used the cot as our heads-up device. But again, with heads-up CPR, it's a process. So, and which part of the process really made the biggest difference, I really scientifically can't tell you. I can say that to me, that if you're doing CPR supine with no other adjuncts, then we kind of basically use that as our baseline for cerebral perfusion and coronary artery perfusion. Then the studies showed and added on other things like active compression, decompression. So the rescue pump. So basically using the toilet plunger and literally, we all know we don't push blood through the heart and system. We actually generate negative pressure and actually pull blood through the system. So then adding on the rescue pump with the impedance threshold device, seemed to improve it also. And then on top of that, then again, I call it the full Monty, doing active compression, decompression CPR with an impedance threshold device, trying to maximize flow and pressures, perfusion, and then deciding if I do elevate the head, what's that going to do for a better neurologic outcome? And then surprisingly, like I said, with the studies showing that if you tilt the head down, you actually had a worse outcome and worse pressures. And actually, if you raise the head slightly, it actually increased the venous return to the heart.
Sure.
It decreased the pressure head that the blood was fighting in the brain, where if you leave someone completely supine and just do CPR, there's actually each fluid wave, there's a concussive force to the brain. Whereas if you slightly elevate the head, you get better venous return, you have less pressure in the head that you're fighting, you get better flow to the head, and you don't get the concussive forces. So in the end, you add all that together, and you actually had better perfusion with the CPR, and in the end, better coronary, not just cerebral perfusion, but coronary artery perfusion too also increased. So both of those increased when you put everything together. But again, they had to decide, well, how far up do you raise the head? And so then that's when initially their initial studies were showing that, well, you definitely don't want to go from supine to 30 degrees because you haven't built up enough pressure to really perfuse the brain. So you're probably going to have a not as great an outcome. So then they decided, well, maybe if we go to 15 degrees after we do rescue CPR, not just normal CPR, it's rescue pump, impedance threshold device, we do a minimum of 1 round, if not 2 rounds of that, to really maximize flow. Then maybe at 15 degrees, we can decrease the pressure in the brain, get better venous return, better flow now that we've maximized that flow, and it's not as much an issue because it's going up an uphill climb. Once we get that taken care of, then it sounds like 30-degree angle was the sweet spot.
Is the optimal.
Where anything above that was you just couldn't fight that pressure.
Sure.
So you actually you decrease the concussive force to the brain, you maximize flow to the brain, you get better venous return. So I'll be honest with you, at Green we started off with using the cot. And then I went to, again, they send me to these conferences.
National conference, right?
And then I saw this device, Eligard, and they just said, "Oh yeah, I go, yeah, we're kind of." I called it the poor man's version of heads-up CPR, and then I said, and I know Rialto was getting into that too. They use the Zoll band, so they do the cot. Because with the Eligard device, you would have to use Lucas. But Rialto was using the cot, which was fine, and that's how I started. But then we had Lucas. Well, the problem I encountered with Lucas was, Fire Medic Lucas, great, continued CPR, defibrillate through it, love it on the steps, love it in a moving rig, love it, love it, love it. But you know what? When you start to elevate the cot up some, that battery pack is top heavy.
Right.
And it has a tendency to want to migrate inferior, and it has a tendency to want to fall over. So we were starting to run into those issues where we actually had to have one of our personnel on scene during an arrest. If we got to the point of being on the cot and starting to do the heads up portion, they literally were assigned to stabilize the Lucas, that's all we could do.
Right.
But I started to look at our statistics, and even just doing the poor man versions of heads-up CPR with rescue pump, rescue CPR, I started to notice, our resuscitation rates were starting to go up.
To improve, right.
And we did have some cases of better neurologic outcome. Now, again, I'll put that with a gargantuan asterisk. I have a department that runs, that department only runs about 35 to 40 full arrests a year. Yeah. So is that really statistically significant? It's very too small of a sample size, but it looked encouraging.
Sure.
So then when I saw Eligard is when I said, well, wait a minute, what's this device? And they said, oh, it's kind of nice. You lay the patient down and, you do your rescue CPR, you get all your perfusion going and everything. And you know what? Then you just hit the button and it does the rest as far as it automatically starts to elevate the chest into the neck head area for you. It does it at the scientifically drawn out, proven angles that it should be at. It does it slow progression to again maximize and not have any of the negative effects since you're going to be fighting a bit of an uphill climb. And then on top of that, lo and behold, I noticed there was a Lucas board. So I'm like, oh.
How
and they're
clever.
like, oh yeah, they have a Lucas board there. You can pop it off, pop it on. I go, no problem. Keep it there.
Leave it there. We want it there.
I said, so our Lucas now, we just click into it? And they're like, oh yeah, you click into it, and then it just, as it elevates, no big deal. It's clicked into the device. It won't fall over.
It's all bolted together, if you will.
So I'm like, I want one. In fact, I need more than one. I need like 3 or 4 of those
For all the trucks, sure.
So that's where Eligard started to come into the process for us, because we do have Lucas. Like I said, you can still do heads-up CPR with the Zoll band. That's fine. It's just that you would have to then do rescue CPR. You're using your Zoll band. You're going to use your cot to elevate, which is fine. Understanding, though, that you have to abide by how much am I going to elevate the cot, what angle am I going to put him at, what angle am I not going to do it at, etc. And like I said, it was just for us, we just, again, not promoting any end product, but we just happened to have Fire Medic Lucas, and I'm like, well, geez, this thing I hit a button, it automatically elevates for me, I don't have to worry about that. Honestly, the main thing I loved was that I can click Lucas into it, and Lucas isn't going to fall over anymore.
Tip over, right.
So then we had the Eligard people come out and talk with us and do their presentations, and then by doing that, I actually had a chance to interact with Dr. Lurie, who was behind all this with Heads Up CPR, Eligard, and actually I was able to kind of pick his brain further as far as, he's been in this for decades.
Correct.
And then I got to learn of each of them, Dr. Lurie, then what's Chief Powell doing. Then even with pediatrics, Dr. Antevi, to me, Peter Antevi's the guru of, at least to me, he's the guru of pre-hospital pediatric
medicine, sure.
And then I started to see his name show up also, and I'm like, boy, these guys are the giants, and they seem to really be buying into this.
They're bolting onto this. There must be something to it.
So, like I said, I didn't just jump into it, though. We, first learned about it, skeptical, went through different process, put our toe in the water, test out different parts of it with, not test, but do different parts of it in what I consider the poor man version. And then, then I had to wrestle with stuff with, American Heart Association, are they really on board or not? I wanted to make sure if I'm going to really implement this, at least in a community-based EMS system, I had to make sure it was approved. It wasn't something that was still considered research. And then finally, when I, in talking with Dr. Lurie and looking at Eligard and all of that, their device actually was FDA approved. It's not experimental. Doing rescue CPR is not experimental.
Not experimental, correct.
His device, as it elevates, how it does it is not experimental. So then I was able to get that through with the chiefs, that it's not like, this is just still being tested, it hasn't been certified yet, et cetera. It's just, it was at least an acceptable option to do such. So that's when we went ahead and went the full Monty, and as I call it, and took the plunge, where I said, then fine, I want Eligards. And then you'll learn, we went through the process too, as far as, how soon do you deploy the device? That's its own talk. But as it came down to it, you couldn't just put one on a chase vehicle. If you really wanted to do it the right way, you needed it immediately
right, yeah.
deployed. So then we went through the process of procurement, all the different devices we needed, rescue pumps, rescue pods, Eligards, how we're going to do the process. We already had Lucas. And then putting all that together then ended up being, how now I had the problem with not just the logistics of getting all this, but how am I going to implement it with our medics?
Operations.
Yeah, how are we going to... So then we, like I said, and it's nice when we linked up with all these people, we were able to stay in touch with them, in fact, do quarterly meetings and, learn from each other as far as how best to train the medics.